All right, hello everyone, and welcome to Supportive Information Sessions. If you're looking to connect for services, you can call for services in Elgin County, Oxford County, Middlesex County, and London from Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Our phone number is 519-673-3242. If you're looking for information and intake support, you can dial extension 222. For current clients and intake support, you can dial extension 284. For family members and intake support, extension 221. For withdrawal support, extension 248. And for the RAM clinics, extension 281. For mental health and or addiction information, support, or crisis services, you can call 1-866-933-2023 or web chat at reachout247.ca. If you need someone to talk to, are feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or lonely, you can call the support line at 519-601-8055. So COVID-19, tips to protect your health. COVID-19 is a new illness that can affect your lungs and airways. It's caused by a virus called the coronavirus. Practicing good hygiene is the best way to protect against the novel coronavirus and other illnesses in this cold and flu season. It's really important that you wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds or use hand sanitizer. It's also important to minimize close contact with other people and maintain physical distancing, so sitting or standing at least 2 meters apart from other people or 6 feet. Stay home if you're sick. Symptoms of COVID-19 include fever, cough, and difficulty breathing. If you are staying with others, make sure that you're keeping the 2-meter or 6-foot distance. And self-assessment. If you think you may have symptoms, you can do a free self-assessment at the link provided, or you can call the Middlesex London Health Unit at 519-663-5317 and press 1 for the COVID hotline. That phone number is operating Monday to Friday from 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. So I'm going to start off today with a grounding exercise. The purpose of this exercise is to help calm the mind and relax the body. It helps to focus the mind to relax, to be open to improve inner awareness, and to support making positive mental or physical changes. So I'll start by asking that you close your eyes or focus on one spot in the room. Roll your shoulders slowly forward and then slowly back. Lean your head from side to side, lowering your left ear towards your left shoulder and then your right ear towards your right shoulder. Relax your muscles. Your body will continue to relax as you meditate. Observe your breathing. Notice how your breath flows in and out. Make no effort to change your breathing in any way. Simply notice how your body breathes. Your body knows how much air it needs. Sit quietly, seeing in your mind's eye your breath flowing gently in and out of your body. As your attention wanders, as it will, just focus back again on your breathing. Notice any stray thoughts, but don't dwell on them. Simply let the thoughts pass. See how your breath continues to flow, deeply and calmly. See the slight breaks between each breath and feel the air entering through your nose, down to your lungs. As thoughts intrude, allow them to pass and return your attention to your breathing. Notice how the space inside your lungs becomes smaller after you exhale and the air leaves your body. Wait for the next breath and count again. Exhale, inhale. Exhale, inhale. Slowly return your attention to the room, and we will begin with our session today. So today's topic is coping with anxiety. My name's Hannah, and I'm a counselor here in the Community Opioid Addiction Program at Addiction Services. So today we'll be discussing a number of strategies this morning that I hope you'll find helpful when dealing with anxiety and its impact on substance use. While I have no magic wand or magic solution to ending things like anxiety, I will say that anxiety can become much more manageable over time if you practice some of the strategies that we're going to talk about today. So the agenda for today, we're going to discuss the definition, causes, and effects of anxiety. We're going to examine common cognitive distortions and means of developing new thought patterns. We're going to learn how to reduce and address anxiety by employing sense-specific grounding techniques. We'll talk a little bit about meditation and how that also allows us to move from higher frequency brain waves, which can lead to anxiety, to lower frequency brain waves, which are a more peaceful state, peaceful mental state. So we'll start with asking the question, what does anxiety mean to you? So for a lot of people, when asked that question, they think of some thoughts or feelings or physical responses that are attached to anxiety, whether that be a fight or flight response or what triggers their anxiety, or potentially thinking of some strategies that they may use to cope with anxiety. So in speaking about anxiety this morning, I'm going to be talking about it in terms of four things. So 1 being situations and events, 2 being thoughts, 3 being feelings, and 4 being actions. This is particularly with respect to how all of these interact to either produce anxiety or reduce the experience of anxiety. So we'll start with situations. So situations and events are neutral in the sense that a given situation or event can and often will be experienced differently by 2 separate individuals based on their thoughts about the situation or the event itself. So for example, take the situation of moving into a new home. One person may have thoughts of fear or hesitation about moving into a new environment, and there may be lots of stress around that idea. Whereas somebody else may have positive thoughts moving into a new home in the same situation and think how great it's going to be moving into a new environment. So it's not the situation itself that affects how we experience or whether or not we experience anxiety, but it's the thoughts that we have about the situation and our interpretation of what that situation is going to be. Moving on to thoughts. So an individual's thoughts are shaped by personally held values, beliefs, and our life experiences. So our thoughts are our perception of what's going on around us and in our environment at any given point in time. And these shape how we interpret different events and circumstances that we're put in. So certain patterns of thinking, also known as cognitive distortions, can play a role in both creating and perpetuating anxiety in a number of situations. Feelings. So when the situation is perceived as threatening by the brain, this can trigger feelings of anxiety, which the brain responds to by sending a message to other parts of the body, telling them to prepare for action. So this is what we're referring to when we talk about the fight or flight response to anxiety. And then lastly, action. So everyone responds to feelings of anxiety differently, but the 2 main actions associated with anxiety are fight or flight, as I recently mentioned. So window of tolerance. So I know this slide's a bit blurry for you guys, but I'll read it out for you. So the window of tolerance or optimal arousal zone is the zone in which we're able to manage day-to-day emotions. So our window of tolerance is developed in our childhood from our attachment with caregivers and having our needs met. Our window of tolerance continues to develop throughout life based on our past experiences. So everyone's window of tolerance is going to look a little bit different. So emotions in the window of tolerance would include feeling psychologically, mentally, and emotionally in a state of balance. Our feelings and emotions are tolerable and manageable. We have a sense of presence and we aren't focusing on the past or on the future. And our reactions are appropriate and fit with the situation. When we have a threatened or we're presented with a situation where we feel threatened, we begin to move towards the zones of hyperarousal or hypoarousal, which you can see on the screen here. So a freeze response. So a third defense mechanism or way of responding to a situation is freeze or hypoarousal. So our body is telling us that it's safe for us to just stop. So freeze response physically may look frozen, feeling like we can't move or having limited energy. Mentally, we may dissociate from the present. Emotionally, we may feel numb or passive. And psychologically, we may have feelings of shame or guilt that could occur. So going back to the fight or flight response, so when a situation is perceived by the individual to be threatening, the brain sends a message to other parts of the body telling them to prepare for action. So that's when the fight or flight response is initiated. So an individual's behavioral response to what they are feeling, anxiety or otherwise, may or may not be the most functional or the most effective way of dealing with the situation, meaning that the person's fight or flight action in response to anxiety may or may not help the person achieve greater well-being in the long run. So the fight or flight response is the normal response to anxiety and stress. It involves numerous physical, mental, emotional, and perceptual reactions. Historically, our ancestors were presented with many dangerous situations, like coming into contact with predators. So, for example, a tiger. And in order to survive such a threatening situation, our ancestors either had to fight off the tiger or run away from it. Both reactions require great strength, endurance, and mental focus. So while we might not necessarily be faced with a tiger, we have situations in our lives that cause us anxiety and result in us having to choose between that fight or flight response. So during the fight or flight response, all of those physiological responses required to achieve the strength and focus necessary to respond to the real or perceived threatening situation are brought to the forefront, while those that are not needed are put to the back burner. So for example, our lung capacity increases and our blood vessels to the muscles dilate in order to increase the amount of oxygen to the muscles so that the individual will have the necessary strength to run or fight. Whereas other bodily functions that aren't essential to running or fighting will start to slow down, such as digestion. So some body responses may be the acceleration of heart and lung action, the inhibition of stomach and intestinal action, constriction of the veins, liberation of nutrients for muscular action, dilation of blood vessels to the muscles, inhibition of tear glands and salivation, dilation of pupils, and relaxation of the bladder. So given that much of the time when North Americans were experiencing anxiety, they're just walking around down the street or sitting at a desk, we don't really have the opportunity, like our ancestors did, to exert the energy that the fight or flight response prepares our body for. So essentially we have all of this built up energy that we're not able to get out the way that our ancestors were able to. So the resulting pent up energy in turn could lead to adverse symptoms across many aspects of a person's life. That is, if the individual does not bring the body back to a more relaxed state. So many of these symptoms are frequently associated with anxiety. So physically, that might be shortness of breath, sweating, or nausea. Mentally, having negative internal dialogue, a loss of ability to respond logically to stimuli. Emotionally, there may be a fear of death or loss of control or of going crazy. There may be a spiritual impact. Perceptual impact, whether you have tunnel vision or heightened senses, and then psychological impact, so feelings of depression or anxiety. So because our thoughts play such a significant role in how we feel, adopting a more positive and flexible way of thinking can go a long way in helping to reduce the uncomfortable symptoms associated with the experience of anxiety. Sometimes substance use can lessen anxiety, allowing an individual to accomplish tasks that they otherwise would be too afraid to do. They may only be comfortable doing certain activities while under the influence, whereas at other times, substance use can increase anxiety. So for people who have been using substances for a longer period of time, they're more likely to have their anxiety increased. That's because they've developed a behavior of avoidance and avoiding those anxiety-provoking situations. So a person may also notice more anxiety when they stop using substances. And it can be really uncomfortable to do things without the armor that the substance use may have provided for us. So it's important to be mindful of whether or not we're self-medicating when we're using substances, and whether or not that's going to play a role down the road when it comes to actually confronting those anxiety-provoking situations. So this little chart right here just kind of shows what anxiety looks like when it's not dealt with over time. So you'll see that the first little hump on the chart there is a little bit shorter than the second one. And that's because that's the first time that that person experienced the anxiety-provoking situation. It caused a little bit of anxiety, but nothing crazy. As time went on, they experienced that situation again, and the anxiety was much more present in that situation because they hadn't developed the skills to adapt to that situation and deal with that anxiety. So as you can see, over time, that pattern starts to develop, and anxiety can become worse and worse when that situation isn't dealt with appropriately over time. So terms of reference, so some cognitive distortions we're going to talk about. So these are some terms that are used to refer to patterns of thinking that we're going to review. I like to use the term cognitive distortion as it reinforces the concept that our thoughts are not always true or reflective of the reality of the situation. I'd like to reinforce that this is not a personal fault or weakness. Rather, it is just a tendency of the human brain to distort reality and to take things personally. So we're going to go through a list of 10 distortions, and there's a good chance that many of you have experienced one or more of these distortions in your lifetime. So just to read the definition on the screen here, cognitive distortion is a term used in therapeutic counseling environments, meaning negative thought patterns. And these are also sometimes referred to as ANTs, so standing for automatic negative thinking. So some cognitive distortions, so AKA negative thought patterns, ANTs, or mind viruses that may contribute to feelings of anxiety include all or nothing thinking. So this is when you perceive everything in extremes. You might look at things in absolute black and white categories, thereby ignoring the reality that most events or moments in life fall somewhere in between. So for example, shortfalls, if a situation falls short of perfect, you might see it as a total failure instead of as a potential learning opportunity. Overgeneralization, this is when you see a single negative event as a never-ending pattern of defeat. So examples of this may be saying things like, I can never do anything right. Though we know this is not the case, you might overgeneralize and say that that's so. Mental filters. So this is when you pick a single negative detail and dwell on it exclusively so that your perception of reality becomes darkened. So you pick a single negative detail and dwell on it. For an example, you may have received positive comments about your presentation to a group of colleagues at work, but one of them says something that's mildly critical. So instead of focusing on all of the positive feedback that you've received, you might obsess for days over the one criticism that you received. So moving on to discounting the positives. So this is the minimization or rejection of positive experiences. So this is when you reject positive experiences by insisting that they don't count, or through minimization of your achievement. Jumping to conclusions. So this is when you interpret things negatively when there are no facts to support your conclusion. So mind reading, this is when you arbitrarily conclude that someone is reacting negatively to you without knowing all of the facts. So if you were to walk by someone on the street who has a grouchy look on their face and personalize it without knowing all of the facts. So maybe that individual is just having a bad day and it's nothing personal, but you make that assumption that it has to do with you. Next would be fortune telling. So this is when you predict that things will turn out badly. And this can result in a self-fulfilling prophecy if you're not careful. So for example, you might predict that you're going to do poorly on a math test, and the prediction causes the stress and anxiety that actually reduces your ability to focus and do well during the test. It's almost like your mind playing tricks on you. And then catastrophizing. So expecting disaster to strike no matter what. So also Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong will go wrong at the worst possible time in the worst possible way. So thinking really negatively. So the next cognitive distortion is magnification or minimization. And this is when you exaggerate the importance of your problems and shortcomings, or you minimize the importance of your desirable qualities. Next is emotional reasoning. So this is when you assume that your negative emotions necessarily reflect the way things are. So for example, if you say you feel tired of flying, therefore you think it must be dangerous to fly, even though objective statistics about air travel would imply otherwise. So you're scared to fly, you really don't want to, but the statistics are telling you that realistically there's a good chance that you're going to be fine. So not being able to look at the facts of the situation, but looking more at things from an emotional standpoint. Should statements. So this is when you tell yourself that things should be the way that you hoped or expected them to be. So they typically reflect a discrepancy between one's personal expectations and the reality of what is, or even what is realistic currently, in a way that can lead to feelings of guilt and or frustration. So for example, an individual who expresses that their house should be clean 24/7 and gets frustrated when it isn't, is holding on to an unrealistic expectation of what is humanly impossible. So moving on to labeling. So labeling is an extreme form of all or nothing thinking that involves the person attaching a negative label to themselves. For example, I'm stupid, in a way that does not distinguish between who we are and what we do. Next is personalization and blame. So this occurs when you hold yourself personally responsible for an event that is not entirely under your control. So moving on, so anxiety is always about the past or the future, but it's never about the present moment. So if we are really focused and fully focused on the present moment, we're not worrying about what's past or what is yet to come. So it's really important to try to ground ourselves and be mindful of staying in the present moment and focusing on what's in our control and not what's outside of our control. As many spiritual teachers will say, there is only one now. Your perception of the now can be joyful or can be filled with negative emotions. Instead of allowing your thoughts to gravitate to the past, your awareness of the present can help ground you to an appreciation of the moment you are experiencing. So grounding techniques. So grounding techniques can play a key role in reducing anxiety by stopping the negative thoughts that lead to and or perpetuate anxiety in the first place. Grounding techniques are really helpful when people are feeling anxious, overwhelmed, depressed, numb, unsafe, or if you're having flashbacks or nightmares. Grounding anchors you to the present and to reality. It helps you stay in the here and now, and by paying attention to the present, you're less likely to be lost in the past with no awareness of present day resources. So 6 ways to practice grounding. So first, you can use your body. Some examples could be laying down on the ground, pressing your toes into the floor, or squeezing Play-Doh. Next would be your senses, your 5 senses. So you could wear your favorite sweatshirt, use essential oils, or make a cup of tea. Self-soothing, so taking a shower or bath, finding an object to ground with, or lighting a candle. And observing, so describing an object in detail, the color, texture, shadow, light, shapes. Breathing, so practicing different breathing techniques, whether it be 4-7-8 breathing, where you inhale to 4, hold for 7, and then exhale to 8. Or distracting yourself. So find all the square objects in the room or all the green objects in the room, count by 7, say the date, whatever it is that can distract yourself from what's giving you anxiety. So grounding techniques. While numerous grounding techniques have been proposed across the anxiety and stress literature, in the end, it is about choosing the technique that's right for you. So the following 2 slides will present some strategies as they relate to each of the 5 senses. Some people find that 1 or 2 of the senses is stronger for them than the others, but try techniques to meet all the senses and see how it feels. So you can do this by rating your anxiety on a scale from 1 to 10, and then trying the techniques and seeing how you would rate your anxiety after you've tried those techniques to see if they've been effective for you. So visually, you could name 5 things that you can see in your present environment, or you can visualize something pleasant and relaxing. Sound, you can listen to the sounds around you, whether it be birds singing or clock ticking, music, whatever it may be. Smell, you can focus on a pleasant and soothing smell in your environment, so maybe flowers or a perfume. Taste, so chewing on a piece of gum, sucking on a mint, savoring a cup of coffee or tea, focusing on that taste in your mouth. And then touch, so focus on physically feeling the different textures around you, such as the arms of the chair you're sitting on, the feel of the floor or the rug under your feet, and the texture of your clothing. You could stretch out your upper body or make use of objects by rubbing a stone in your hand, touching a pillow, or snapping an elastic band on your wrist. So for those of you who work more at a cognitive level and you like more processing techniques, the following are some other potential grounding strategies. So utilizing cognitive strategies also helps to redirect blood flow away from the emotion focused areas of the brain towards the areas of the brain associated with logic and reasoning, which also helps to reduce feelings of anxiety. So examples of cognitive techniques may include counting backwards from 100 by 3s, 7s, or 9s, asking someone a simple question such as for the time, direction to somewhere, or the price of something, repeating an encouraging phrase over and over to yourself, such as these feelings have passed before and they will pass again, focusing on your breathing, playing simple word games such as spelling words backwards, switching initials in first and last names, or one thing that you like from each letter of the alphabet, just sort of distracting your mind. So 5 points to ponder. So you can expect, allow, and accept that fear will arise at times. When fear comes up, stop, wait, and let it be. Focus on and do manageable things in the present. Rate your fear from 0 to 10. Watch it go up and down. Function with fear and appreciate your achievements. So fear is an inevitable part of life as a person develops and faces new challenges, but it's about trying and learning to work with this feeling instead of against it. That will help to not only decrease the feeling itself quicker, but in turn will help to function better and experience less anxiety. So avoiding situations that cause anxiety typically only makes things worse in the long term. As you learn to function with fear, the hope is that you will also gain confidence in your ability to manage it and gain a more positive perspective of yourself and the ups and downs of life in general. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.